Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on just about everything you want to know on narcissistic, difficult, and toxic relationships. How many of you in a narcissistic relationship of any kind, parent, partner, workplace, you name it, has ever referred to this as a Jekyll Hyde situation? I'm sure lots of you. So let's break down why that is. And before we get to that, if you're new to this channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button. And then also please hit the bell. We put out new content every day and you'll get a notification. So let's take on a very classical dynamic in the narcissistic relationship, the Jekyll-Hyde dynamic. It's interesting because this is a question that came from people who watch our YouTube channel. And it's a question we've gotten more than a few times. And it's a dynamic that really takes a toll on people in these relationships. It's the Jekyll Hyde of it all, the two faces of the person who has a narcissistic personality, because that's the challenge of these relationships. There are some real good moments in them. There are times that the person with this narcissistic personality style can actually be nice. They can be on point. They can almost seem warm and loving and generous. And then just like that, you're met up with an angry, rageful, dysregulated, gaslighting, dehumanizing version of them. Two versions that can exist in the same person and come out in the same day, heck, in the same hour. Now, for those of you who don't know, a little bit of a literary moment. The reference here, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were the characters in a story by Robert Louis Stevenson. They were the same person. So Mr. Hyde was a sadistic, cruel, and murderous person who was doing all these terrible things. Dr. Jekyll was just a regular guy, not a bad guy. When we use this reference based on this story, it's like almost feels like a multiple personality or a dissociative setup. Some of it even evokes the concept of the Jungian shadow, the parts of the self that are least desirable, and thus they're not really embodied into the personality. We don't want that dark person part of our personality in our embedded. And I'll talk about Jung's shadow and narcissism in another video. The shadow in Jung's model is prone to projection, which is a narcissistic defense. So Jung took this idea of a shadow in a different direction than Freud did when talking about narcissism. But in a narcissist, it may not quite be as sinister and murderous as the dark world of Jekyll and Hyde. However, many survivors, both those in and out of these relationships, can literally experience the narcissistic person as two different people. And lots of people will say, I actually want to stay in the relationship with the good one, the Dr. Jekyll, as it were. I want to stay with the good version of this person. So how does this happen? I have to tell you, with each passing week and month, the more I do this work, and the more I work with and consult with clients who have narcissistic styles, a key element of the narcissistic personality is the inability to regulate stress, frustration, or disappointment. I have to say that the pandemic in and of itself has brought a lot of this to the forefront. So if you're even finding in your life that the people with narcissistic personality styles that you have to deal with, or the difficult people you have to deal with, are worse than ever, it certainly can be a part of it. Because the fact is, we are all much more frustrated and disappointed. We are coming on a year of living like this. Our lives are curtailed. Many opportunities have been lost. We're not able to interact with our usual supports in the usual way. We may have far more financial problems than usual. All of this stuff that's difficult for all of us. We're all going through this. But whether it is under the difficult times that we find ourselves in, or it's in more usual and normal times, whatever those are, it's all about, when we're looking at people with narcissistic personalities, it's all about the inability to regulate in the face of things that happen, frustration, disappointment, failure, or stress for the narcissist. And that might very well be the core of that Jekyll-Hyde dynamic. They can't regulate. So when things are going fine, You get Dr. Jekyll, pleasant enough. When things go badly, you get Mr. Hyde. The struggle is that things that are sometimes tiny, like little things, qualify as major frustrations or stressors for a narcissist. They go to get a coffee, they encounter a line at their favorite coffee bar, they lose it. They find that the milk in the refrigerator is spoiled, they lose it. These minor things ping the grandiosity and entitlement of a narcissistic personality. A superhero wouldn't have to wait in line for a latte, right? An important VIP person wouldn't live in a house where the milk is spoiled. So when these ordinary things happen, it really pings the grandiosity. In these moments, the narcissist is reminded of the one thing that terrifies them the most, their ordinariness. And when life reminds them from time to time that they are in fact ordinary, just like all of us, that doesn't work for them. So while you wouldn't think about waiting in a line, like a lot of us are waiting in more lines than usual. We have to. We may not like it, but we do it. For a person who's narcissistic, waiting in line is a reminder that they aren't special enough. And bam, an ordinary 5 to 10 minute wait turns into a rageful tantrum. And heaven forbid if it's a major frustration, such as a lawsuit or a demotion at work or having to cancel a major event that they were going to organize, like, I don't know, like a wedding or a party or something. Then it's blaming the world, persecutory thoughts that the world is out to get them, that life isn't fair to them, that nobody is fair to them, that they have it worse than anyone. Those of you who have listened to these rants, you've been there, you know this. All of this culminates in the eggshell walking that people have to endure to maintain any kind of a relationship with a narcissistic person. Because you don't know what is going to turn Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde. There's lots of stuff happening in the world you can't control, and that could set them off. That you don't know what's going to make the more malevolent parts of them come out. So you walk on eggshells to keep the nice version of themselves, the Dr. Jekyll version, around a little longer. If you grew up with this in this sort of Jekyll-Hyde home, this is all the more difficult. You are actually quite well versed in the dynamics of these Jekyll-Hyde worlds. Your life as a child would vary on the basis of the narcissistic parents' moods. And this is also a dynamic that's often observed in families characterized by alcohol or drug use disorder as well. You didn't know if you were going to get the mean drunk or the nice drunk or the sober parent. You never really quite relax when you grow up like this, because in essence, there was basically an incendiary device or a bomb, basically your parent, walking in and out of the room at all times, and you just never knew when it was going to blow. It's actually here that the trauma bond gets its roots. Basically, for children who grow up like this, you learn to crawl on eggshells and then learn to walk on eggshells. So it's basically the only kind of walk you know. Healing from this means learning to put your feet down and not worry about the crunch. So it's a long process. So that's where we all need to do the deep dive and ask ourselves, what is the goal of all this eggshell walking? Usually most people say it's to avoid their rage, and I'll buy that. I get it. Rage is awful, and it's exhausting, and frankly, it's scary, and in some cases, rage continues and culminates in physical violence. Avoiding that makes absolute sense. But why else? Why else do we eggshell walk? To avoid conflict, and I get that. Most of us are actually not built for conflict. And why else do we eggshell walk? To avoid guilt. We don't want to be the one who's responsible for what went wrong. And what went wrong is basically the narcissistic individual blowing up. So in fact, you may take on the lion's share of the work of a relationship as well as the lion's share of the blame, because it's just easier than all the rage and the guilt and all the rest of it. We also have to be honest. Sometimes we walk on eggshells because we like when Dr. Jekyll's around, and we don't want Mr. Hyde to come back. We don't want to see the angry, tantruming, mean, unempathic person, because it's a reminder that things aren't good, that this is not a healthy relationship. Now, this last point is obviously a lot more complicated. For some people, once they understand the sequence, the Jekyll Hyde activation sequence, if things aren't going the way that the person with the narcissistic personality wants, they're going to throw a tantrum and a rage fit and just sort of make a mess of things. And many people stuck in these loops actually get angry and say, that's not okay. I wouldn't let a 3-year-old get away with this. I'm not going to let a 53-year-old get away with this. And yet, a lot of them do, right? Paradoxically, one thing that I suggest to survivors, but I only suggest it only if it's safe. Okay, this is not a suggestion that would be that would make sense in a situation that's ever characterized by violence. You could always try to poke the beast a little bit. Now, well, here's what I mean by that. Don't walk on eggshells so much. Here's why. I recognize that if the really evil Mr. Hyde shows up often enough, more survivors will say, this is ridiculous. This doesn't feel good. I'm more likely to get out then. Or see, if enough Mr. Hyde shows up, that this is just a person who's not really nice. I wanted to think they were good, but they're actually really quite selfish. They really expect all of us to run our lives on their emotional schedule. The more of the Mr. Hyde, the more of the tantruming mean person we see, you might see a little bit more breaking down of the cognitive dissonance. You can only justify cruel emotional tantrums so much. And if you aren't playing the tiptoe around the elephant in the room game, and you're not always walking on eggshells and trying to make it so nothing interrupts their universe, then it may allow you to see the relationship and the person more clearly. And this doesn't mean that you magically get out and say, oh, they're terrible, now I'm going to go. But instead, you don't see it as such a separation between good partner and bad partner, good parent and bad parent, good boss and bad boss, or good friend and bad friend. But rather, you might see it more uniformly as unhealthy parent, unhealthy parent, unhealthy partner, unhealthy boss, unhealthy friend. Healthy people regulate, even when things aren't going well. They keep it together and they take ownership of their behavior if they do break and they are antagonistic. Be open and honest. Maybe you can't leave your narcissistic relationship, and that's okay. Not my place to tell you whether you leave or go or whatever, or stay. It's not my place. But if you are staying, for example, in a relationship where you have children, so you don't have to share custody, I completely understand that. Don't try to justify the good days, because that makes it confusing. Keep your eyes on the prize of, I'm in this so I can be with my kids all the time. If you are staying in touch with a parent because you feel sort of sad for them, even though they were terribly nasty and mean to you, or because to be in touch with them means you get access to other family members, then stop trying to search for the good parent and instead be honest with yourself about what this parent is about and why you maintain that relationship. The Jekyll-Hyde two-faced dynamic of the narcissistic relationship very clearly keeps people stuck. There are enough good days to sort of really, really keep that cognitive dissonance and trauma bond in place and really mess with your head. And there are enough bad days on which you blame yourself and force yourself to make justifications. The key is to not justify and then go to that much more difficult place of radical acceptance. Whether you stay, whether you go, that's your choice. But the pattern, the Jekyll-Hydeness of it all, is not likely to change. Because the fact is, disappointment and stress and frustration, they're all a part of adult life. And so because of that, and you cannot fully protect the narcissistic personality in your life from that, they'll keep having these meltdowns and blaming you and everyone else for them. I've known people who blame themselves for the traffic on the freeway because the narcissistic person had a meltdown. You're not responsible for the traffic on the freeway. This two-faced dynamic also means that the enablers will have stronger voices. They are a great person. When the enablers will say something like, "Ah, yeah, your partner's a great person. They've always been so nice to me. Oh, yeah, they're grumpy. Maybe they're just stressed. You know, your partner, your mom, your dad, whoever, they work hard. And they just want to give all of you a great life." So if you aren't engaging in trauma-bonded justification, this good-bad dynamic can all but guarantee that everyone around you will do it for you. And that's what's so hard. Even if you can break through and not do it, other people will. This can also get tricky in therapy when a therapist may fall into the hole, and this is a big issue that comes up with narcissistic partners. Well, there are good things about this person. Can't you just focus on the good stuff? No, because when we talk about the good-bad dynamic, it's not just that. We miss a third part of the dynamic, and that third part is the anticipation. The anticipation of when Mr. Hyde's going to come around again. It's not just about some good days and some bad days, and that's that. It's not like your narcissistic person in your life gives you a calendar of moods so you can plan, like, yeah, Monday and Tuesday look good, but plan for rage and through Wednesday through Friday, and I'm expecting heavy gaslighting on Saturday. You could probably work with that. The third part of this dynamic is the living with the unexploded bomb part of it, the waiting for things to explode part of it. So that means that even on their good days, you know it is going to be short-lived, and there's a grief to that. You may not be able to exhale long enough and say, and enjoy those good moments. And the narcissistic person will often weaponize those good moments when you still stay tense during the good moments, and they'll say, "You're such a downer. Everyone here's in such a good mood, and you're so tense and dull." Your tense and dull is actually you being afraid of the next blow up. You would have to be a magician to be able to mirror their happy, angry, sad roller coaster. So no, you cannot just focus on the good things when things are bad and someone's raging at you and someone's manipulating you. This isn't just summer camp on a rainy day. This is life, and it's your life. You can view things holistically. You can say, this relationship is with a person who is dysregulated, who is egocentric, who is relatively emotionally underdeveloped, and who is not capable of going deep, and who will forever blame other people, including me. That this is a person, it's a bleak picture, this is a very bleak picture of this person, but it's not just about accentuating the positive. It's an honest picture. And while there may be more grief in doing it this way, there is hopefully also less self-blame, less confusion, and more of a wake-up call. You can have all that and say, yeah, and every so often when all the stars line up for this difficult person, then they're able to be nice to me. This Jekyll-Hyde dynamic turns you into a mere character actor in the story of your life. It really sort of subjugates you into the position of being a person who is just a human pacifier who is supposed to mirror, cheerlead, soothe, support, and comfort a difficult person to the detriment of your own life. It's like being a personal assistant to an angry mannequin for the rest of your life. And that is not life. So if you've never read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you should give it a read. Mr. Hyde was actually pretty evil, though. And listen, those good days, they may be enough for some people to push through. Just don't let them be the fodder for your justification, because once you do that, there's a greater likelihood of self-blame, which is not good for you. I hope that clarifies that. And for all of you that go through the Jekyll-Hyde of it all, hope it gives you some more clarity on this dynamic. Thanks again. Dynamic. Thanks again. Dynamic. Thanks again.